So let's get right into the training. We did ask Nick Odom to do the training tonight, and I'll tell you why. We were at our own Super Saturday here in Charleston, and our marketplace had the pleasure of having Mr. Odom in to be the guest speaker and the trainer. So he not only did a phenomenal briefing wasn't morning, it was the afternoon. I think all the guests in the room were signing up. They were ready to go. But the training that he did that day was, sometimes you're sitting. How many trainings have we sat in, Frank? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 2.
21 times 12 months, a year at least, or plus. We've been to. It's a big part of it's a big part of our team's growth all the time. The trainings are for us personally and for the team. And when Nick did the training this Saturday, it hit home with so many people in that room. I saw people.
Matter of fact, Victor really took it hard.
Yeah, you're going to hear some. Yeah,
we are going to hear from him.
Yeah, well, you're going to hear a little blip about him.
They've always been hot. Him and his wife's always been hot. But when they heard that training, he really got hot.
Yeah, it's empowering, and so. Just for those of you who are new on the line, I know we do have a few new people. I want you to know that Mr. Odom, he and his partner, Justin Peterson, broke all company records when they hit platinum in 5 months. He is a $100,000 ring earner. He's currently, and Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the right way to say your title. He is working with Home Office. He is the executive director of the whole young professional movement within Legal Shield, which is a very big deal. They fly him out to home office and make plans with him and things like that. Is that your official title, Executive Director of Young Professionals?
I forgot I could unmute, right? I'm over here typing back to you in the chat. I think my title is Council Chair of the Young Pros. But I think from, just so that you guys understand, like there are basically a few different channels inside of Legal Shield, right? Like we have LOJ, we have Legal Shield Espanol, we have the Young Pros, and there is a channel leader for each of those. Okay. I am the channel leader for the Young Pros in that role. It's really just like an MVP position or a regional manager position or anything like that. All I'm doing is just acting as a liaison between corporate and the field to help set up and coordinate events and incentives and things like that.
Yeah, and they furnish him with a private jet, a Maserati.
Yeah.
Frank, you're hired. You're my new agent.
You deserve it, buddy.
Yeah.
What is that car behind you? What's the picture of the car behind you?
We have 2 Lamborghinis up on the wall here, and I spent far too much on these paintings. I highly recommend nobody buys anything like that for their wall.
Those are paintings?
Yeah, and Frank, you would kill me if you only knew. So now I've got a very good visual of what the real thing will look like in the future. And you know what? It was the custom framing that cost the real money, not the painting. I'll say that.
Leadership is a lot about staring. I don't know if you know what that means, but leaders stare and they sit and stare and they stare and then they finally see it. And then when they see it, they just take a whole team with them. So leadership is a lot about staring. So you need to stare at that thing a lot.
I'm on it.
I'm telling you, you got to zoom out, stare for a while, and you visualize it. Okay.
Okay. So, my goal is for everybody to be empowered tonight. For a lot of people, you're gonna want people to watch this replay. I know. So I'm going to turn it over to Nick, and what he's going to train on is going to be one of the most important elements of it is. Maybe the most important thing to learn in our business. So listen up and take it away, Mr. Nick Odom. Thank you so
take
much.
Notes. Take a lot of notes.
Well, thank you so much. Sorry to mess up the flow of the call there by jumping in, but I appreciate you guys having me on the call. It's always an honor to be asked to speak. And especially because apparently the training that I did in Charleston was impactful for those that were there. So I do think this will be helpful for you guys. Frank said leadership's a lot about staring and thinking and contemplating, and I think that that's true. I think that all of us should take time on a daily basis, if possible, to get away from all of the other things. Like I personally listen to audiobooks 24/7. People want to know how I get so much reading done. Like, let me just go ahead and tell you the secret, guys. If I'm doing anything that doesn't involve me talking to another human being, I'm also listening to audio. Some of you guys know that I'm an avid gamer. If you can't tell from the worn out chair and the green headphones, I spend a lot of time in this chair playing video games. That's what I like to do for fun. But what I do is during that time, I double down and I listen to audio at the exact same time that I'm playing, so that if I'm working out, I'm listening to audio. If I'm driving, I'm listening to audio. And so for me, I've had to specifically pull a little bit of time aside on a daily basis to just think to myself, do a plan, do review of the day, think through some of the things that are going on in your life, and actually think about what you want, think about where you're going, think about your path to get there. I think far too often people spend all their time having information dumped in their brain, and they don't spend enough time actually thinking about it. And so the reason I say that is because I've been thinking really hard about what are the things that have been extremely effective for our team, and what has caused us to explode during certain times and have all of our momentum fall off at other times, and really try to figure out what are the things that were the building blocks behind our success early on and our continued success where others have left us and we've continued to move forward. And so one of the things that has constantly come back up with me, one of the things that I constantly am reminded of and that I see in other businesses and other different areas all the time, I'm constantly reminded of this, is that whenever new people get started here, in fact, a lot of you guys that are on here tonight are leaders, right? And when I say that, obviously anyone can be a leader at any level, but a lot of the people that are on here tonight, actually have teams that they're leading, that they're building with. And so as a leader, right, there's a little bit of a different perspective that you have in the business, right? You're trying to help people get paid and promoted, right? You're trying to help new people to have success here long enough that they can become independent and on their own go and build a business without you. And the first question that I'm always asked, and I want you guys to think about this and think if you've been asked this a lot yourself, is, well, in fact, there's two main questions I get. Both of them are essentially the same thing. One is, what do I do? Okay, you guys have heard this, right? A new associate or a prospect that's like, well, what would I do? What would I be doing, right? Like they get the concept, like, okay, we get paid for referrals, but like, what would I be doing on a daily basis? And then the other question I get from people is, well, what do I say to people? Like, what should I say? And so, and I'm going to work this in a roundabout way to get to the point here, guys. So I apologize if if you're taking notes, I know they may not be like point 1, point 2, point 3, but I'll try to mention if there's some things that are worth writing down. Here are a couple things that are worth writing down. Everybody wants to know, what do I say to somebody? And we have to, there's a balance in everything in our business, right? There's a push and pull. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about keeping your head in the clouds, but keeping your feet in the dirt, right? Like constantly being out there on the battlefield, doing work, building the business, but having your mindset be like forward looking and from a big picture perspective while still doing the daily right activities, right? So there's always a push and pull between the big picture and the small actions, right? Between the between the goal of time freedom and the time that you have to invest to build that, right? There's always a push-pull in our business. And one of the biggest is that you can't use a script when you're calling people because you sound like a robot. But on the flip side, if you don't give a new person a script, if you don't give a new person what to say, they will literally say whatever comes to mind, okay? So if you're taking notes, here's a couple things to write down that I just think are really profound, but I hope that they'll help make this point. Number one, there's a difference between training and learning. Okay, there's a difference between training and learning. So this is the performance family team call, right? But every week we talk about our featured trainer, right? Our guest trainer, right? With the Young Pros, we have a weekly Young Pros training call, right? We go to Super Saturdays and hear from a guest trainer, right? And so we use this word trainer all over the place, but I want you guys to think about the action of training, right? If you're training for something, right? If you're training for an event, if you're training to do something, if you're training to become something, training and learning are different because learning doesn't require an active input, right? You can learn while just listening, but you can't actually participate in training unless you're actually taking action. Does that make sense? Like if you have a personal trainer, okay, if you have a personal trainer, their job is to help you, assist you in training, but the training is you actually lifting the weights, right? Of going through the motions of doing the work. And so I want you guys to think about training for a second. I was told early on in network marketing, and I was told this by someone who was a top earner in Amway and then the #1 earner in another company. Okay, so a top earner in Amway and then a #1 earner in another company. In fact, for a small amount of time, he was in the top 10 all time for network marketers. Okay. And I got an opportunity to go to a private training with about 30 people and him. And he said, first thing, when we started the class, and you can't forget the first thing, right? He said, first things first, the most important thing is the best trained team always wins. The best trained team always wins. And I find myself now 6 years later, okay, because that training I went to was over 6 years ago. I'm finding myself 6 years later thinking back to that and going, that's exactly what we were doing when we first got started. That's why we had so much success right out the gate, is that we were getting with people and they would say, what do I say? And I would show them exactly what to say, right? I would give them bullet points, right? So it's not exactly a script. And for those of you guys that don't know, the script that I follow, the one that I use personally, the one that I train, is out of GoPro by Eric Worre. GoPro by Eric Worre. In fact, and if you're looking for a link to that, there is I'm putting it in the chat right now. There is a link for that on the Performance Family website to get the audio or the book version of that. It's in our Book of the Month category. It was actually one of our books this year, surprise, right? So make sure you take a look at that. But that's where I use my script. But I would give somebody those bullet points. Then I would have them practice it with me. And I would have them go through it a few times until they got a hang of it. Then I would start throwing a couple of objections at them, right? So that they had to actually handle what would they do in those situations until they got really comfortable. And then we would make their first couple of calls together. Okay, so they would actually call out to their first few people. I would observe them doing that. And then I would coach them, okay? Now, Jim Rohn talks about the distinction here, right? So there's a distinction between training and learning. There's also a distinction between coaching and teaching, right? There's a distinction between coaching and teaching, right? Teaching is the action that results in learning, right? But coaching is more about course correction, right? Coaching is more about being a third-party view of the situation. In other words, we frequently say, hey, listen to people who have what you want in life. Listen to people who have what you want in life. But oftentimes the best coaches for a sports team were not always the top players. A lot of times they were players, but sometimes there are top coaches that weren't top players. And why is that? Well, it's because what the coach is really good at is watching the player and letting the player know what they did in that really fast-paced situation and saying, hey, you actually stepped this far to the right. And what you need to do is you need to adjust the angle of your foot to the left this amount. And they could see the player do that where the player couldn't see that because they're outside the picture frame. And in our business, I would do that for the new person. I would watch them make a phone call. And a lot of times there's very easy mistakes that people make in the invitation, and they don't know it's a mistake because you don't get immediate feedback on that. But if somebody watches you, right, then all of a sudden you get good feedback. So one mistake that people commonly make is they leave out the time confirmation. In other words, they might do a perfect invitation at the beginning, and they're in a hurry. They compliment them. They let them know why they're calling. They say, if I would you. The person says, yeah, I'll watch it. They're excited. They say, okay, great. I'll send it to you right now. And they get off the phone. And if you don't have a coach watching you to see that and go, hey, just so you know, right? Because, and understand that as a player, to be a good player, you have to be open to coaching, right? When we say, I want you guys to really think about this. We say the people who are going to succeed the most here are the people who are the most coachable. Okay, that's not the same as the most teachable, because there's a lot of people here that are extremely teachable. They're willing to come to all the presentations and take notes and learn things, but they aren't necessarily willing to be coached when the coach says, hey, I saw you were doing it wrong. This is how to do it better. They want to push back in that situation, but that's where your coachability comes in. Okay, so I want you guys to understand that. So if you're brand new in the business, I know I'm talking about some high level things right now, but if you're brand new in the business, understand your best pathway to become a top earner here is to be extremely coachable to the other top earners. Okay, I know that sounds obvious, right? If a top earner, not just a top earner, but especially with our team, I want you to keep this in mind. If the Acoins offer you a piece of coaching, in other words, if they say, hey, I noticed you did it this way. I think that there's some ways you can improve it. Do it this way. Of course, they're going to be nice about it. But not only are they someone who, they've created the success, right? So you know that they actually do know the form that is used to get a good result. but they also have a financial investment in your success. So when they're coaching you, just like the coach of your team, right? If you're playing sports, if you're on the football field and your coach says, hey, we want to adjust in this way, the players that are the best trust their coaches 100% because they know they can't see, you can't see what's inside the picture frame if you're inside the frame. So they just trust the coach because they know the coach isn't trying to make them feel bad about a mistake. The coach is trying to make sure they win the game because the coach's job is going to be determined if they win enough games or not. So it's like you guys have a vested interest in success, so they trust the coach completely. So here, being coachable to have success a lot of times means not just being willing to learn something new, but in real time being willing to take course correction and say, okay, I was doing it. I mean, maybe even wrong is not the right word, right? There are areas where I could do this better. Here's a suggestion. I'm going to try and implement that. So if you're new in the business, understand that the more coachable you can become to the top earners, the better you're going to do, because coachability isn't about being right or wrong. Coachability is about somebody seeing something that you're doing that you can't personally see. Okay, so I want to make sure we made that distinction, because I think for a lot of the leaders, that may help you define how you're talking to somebody. It's one thing to be teaching someone something. It's another thing to be coaching them, and especially getting somebody's buy-in and saying, hey, if I see you doing something that I know is going to cost you money or hurt your business, would you like for me to let you know? They're going to go, yeah, of course. You know what I mean? And that way, if you have that conversation ahead of time, then when you do say, hey, I just want to offer a little bit of coaching, just an opportunity to improve, keep in mind, my goal is just to make sure you make as much money and have as much success as possible. So don't take this as a personal offense, right? You told me you wanted me to let you know, right? And they say, yeah, that gives you an opportunity to help course correct. So that's the importance of being coachable if you're a new person. Now, as a leader, when we're coaching our brand new people, here's what I found, just some observations. And I think this was why the training was so powerful. It's just some things that I've noticed in the market, some things that have happened that are pretty profound. We had a fast start training here in the Raleigh market a couple weeks ago, and we had some brand new associates here on my team, and I was fired up for them, right? Because they're excited. You guys know when you have new people and they're fired up about the business, like it gets you excited too, right? Like I was getting really excited for these guys. And we went through the full 4-hour fast start training, okay? Full 4-hour fast start training. Now, a lot of people leave that training and they're like, man, I'm way more confident in the company now because they've seen all the company background and the history. They've seen all the products. Their belief has been raised quite a bit. But we got to the end of this, and I had gone through the invitation about 10 times in front of them, right? I went through all the steps. I did it with objections. I did it again. I did it again. I did it again. You know what I mean? Until some people are kind of like looking at me like, are you really going to repeat this again? Right? And we had one guy at the front of the room who was like the sharpest person in the room. Okay. Like the sharpest you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like just visibly, like he just had that vibe. Right? He was on point. He was dressed sharp. He was well-spoken. He was asking intelligent questions. He was taking notes. You're thinking, man, this guy is on point. And we got to the end, and it was like, okay, guys, let's make our first few calls. And this guy, and I don't even know his name. I couldn't throw him under the bus. This wasn't one of the guys that joined my team. You know what I mean? But just so you guys get this perspective, was terrified to death to call his friends and family. He was scared to death to do it. Now, he didn't say that in so many words, but it was like, all right, let's make your first call. Who's top on your list? And it was like stall tactics, right? Like, well, anything I can do. Well, like, can you do one first? Like, can you show me one live? I'm like, I did like 10 of these, right? I've done so many of these. And the reason why people are afraid to make those first calls is because they've never done anything like this. They haven't practiced, right? They don't know exactly. Think about people being afraid of public speaking, right? The reason why you're afraid of public speaking, it's because of the possibility of embarrassment, which is the same reason why people are afraid of making calls in this business. But that possibility, the feeling of fear, comes from not knowing what to say. If you know exactly what to say, public speaking becomes an easy situation, right? And so part of this was helping them to know exactly what to say. The other part was actually making sure they got the form right, right? So if you're a coach, and let's say you're a personal trainer, and you demonstrate to someone how to do a perfect curl, and then you just say, okay, go do 5 sets of 10 every day for the next few weeks, and we'll get back together and see how your results are going. But you didn't actually have them do it for you and demonstrate and correct them and make sure they were doing it right. A few weeks later, you may have somebody with a back problem that's your personal training client because they've been doing a bunch of reps, but they've been doing it the wrong way. And so this is what's happening when a lot of people leave this class. They hear how to say it, they take the notes of the invitation, and they go, okay, I'm going to say just that. And then the first call they make goes something like this. Hey, Eric, it's Nick, man. Listen, I just got started with this thing called Legal Shield. Dude, it's really cool. They got 24/7 access to an attorney. I think we're going to make really good money with this. Listen, man, I got a video I'm going to send you. It's going to explain everything. And you're like, where did all that come from? Like, I didn't teach this person any of that, right? And I watched this happen. Okay, I watched this happen because in the room, I had somebody that was like, basically what I did is I got a copy of John Maxwell's book out. And I held it up and I said, okay, anyone who can do the invitation just like I did for the class, right? Demonstrate from the front of the room, I'll give you this book. Who's feeling confident? One guy was like, I got it. No problem. It's like, all right, ring, ring, hello. He gave me that invitation I just gave you. And I was like, dude, first step was be in a hurry. We skipped that. Second step was compliment. We skipped that. Third step, right, was why you called. And one of the most important parts we mentioned was not mentioning Legal Shield, right? Like he totally whiffed completely. And he had just watched me do it 10 times. He took good notes on it. And he even felt confident enough to volunteer. So what does that tell you? It's not enough to learn something if you don't practice it first, right? It's not enough to learn something if you don't practice it first. And the muscle memory is so critical, right? Because I can't tell you how many times I've run into somebody that I know. And especially when I was on a college campus, this would happen all the time. And because I had the invitation so down, I would see that person, I would immediately jump into it, be like, oh man, listen, I know you're on the way to class and I'm on the way to class, right? Be in a hurry. But I know you're also one of the sharpest people I know. You're actually on my list of people to contact. I'm glad we ran into each other. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, man, I know you've been telling me you want to make some extra money. I think I found a way for us to do that. I know we don't have time to talk about it right now, but if I sent you a video explaining what I'm working on, would you watch that and just let me know what your thoughts are? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. I got to run. The video's about 20 minutes long. When do you have time to watch it so we can get back on the phone? Right? And I'm confirming a time with them and then I'm moving on to class. And you can't do that. You can't be prepared to make an invitation like that if you haven't practiced it until the point where it becomes muscle memory, right? I've had friends that have done exceptionally well recruiting at bars and social gatherings where there's drinking involved, okay? And I have personally seen one of my friends, I won't name them, that was probably a little bit more on the fun side than the working side at this point on the night out on a Friday. And they met somebody new and I watched him do a perfect invitation for this person while he was what I consider to be too intoxicated to work. And I thought, how did he do that? But this is a good example, right? Because even when those things that you do daily, those things that are habits to you, those things that you have practiced so many times that you're so good at it, even when you're dead drunk, even when you're dead tired, even when you've just finished up a 2-hour-long workout, even when you finish an 8-hour-long workday and you're exhausted, you can pull that out and put it out, right? And I know how you guys feel. I'm drinking coffee right now. I think it's like 9:30, right? So it gets tired. But if you don't practice it, you can't succeed at it. So here's what we're doing for people. We're having people get started. We're teaching them what to say. We're not practicing with them. And their first time practicing is on a live call with one of their most important friends and prospects. And the people that they need to have validate them, right? If we're getting someone's first win is so important because as soon as they feel validated, that's why welcome calls, and if you guys haven't heard me on this, welcome calls are so important. If you have a new associate get started, you need to get them in contact with 3 people or more. That's what Darnell does, 3 people or more to have a positive interaction and meet them about Legal Shield right away, because no way they're going to have 3 people be negative about it. Right? But if they've had 3 people be positive about it, and they have one of their friends just dump on this and say a bunch of negative stuff, they're going to be thinking about the 3 positive conversations they have with all different people from all different backgrounds that are having success here. And they're going to go, well, my friend may just not know what's going on. But if the first thing they get is negative, right? So getting someone's first win is so big, but the first call they're making is basically their first practice call. Now, I want to give you a couple more examples of this and why it's so important. One is vector marketing. Okay, this is my background. I sold kitchen knives before this. We got 18-year-old high school kids. Okay, I'm talking some socially awkward people, some people with some people that I would say, hey, somebody would call and order pizza for the office, and they would say, can you call? Because they're afraid to make phone calls, right? Those, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like that's the group of people we're dealing with. We taught them to sell millions of dollars worth of kitchen knives in-home presentations. And they weren't showing a video. They were doing a 45-minute live presentation, scripted out, 30 pages long. Let me tell you why they were able to do that. Because for 3 days, We brought them in a classroom and we had them practice with each other over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until they were so tired of it, right? Until they could do it from memory. But that's the trick, guys, right? Once you've practiced that much, all of a sudden they show up and they do such a good job. And we only require them to memorize 2 parts of the script. So I want you guys to understand this. I had kids selling millions of dollars worth of kitchen knives, 18-year-old kids. They were doing it by reading a 30-page script to somebody. And they only memorized 2 pages. One was the close, which is where they just simply ask, like, hey, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you this question. Would you like to buy the homemaker set today? Right? And then the second page was where they asked for referrals, because that was where the rubber met the road, right? So we said, you have to memorize these 2. Yeah, Cutco is alive and thriving. I'll tell you that. They came out with a can opener, guaranteed forever. If you're tired of replacing can openers, there's a plug for Cutco. Get yourself a can opener for Christmas, but buy it through a rep, okay? Help out a kid. Help out a kid. Don't just go to their store or whatever. So why do we have them memorize those 2 pages? Because that's where all the money was made, right? That's where all the money was made. Well, with us, where is all the money made? All the money is made on that initial call, because we know the statistics. We know that people who are terrible at this and who are socially awkward, that refer enough people, right? Just to give you guys the worst case scenario, right? I'm not saying everyone in legal is socially awkward. I'm saying that you guys have seen the people on stage and you're going, I can't believe this person's a 6-figure earner. And here's how they did it. They got the video in front of enough people, right? So we know that our sales process already works. People see the information, they sign up, and they join the business. That already happens no matter who is sharing them. Guys, I don't know who's, okay, you got that figured out. Be careful pressing all your buttons on Zoom, guys. I know you guys like to click buttons. It's not a video game, though. Your mute button, the amount of times I have to mute you guys back, you guys don't even know, is terrifying. I hope you're not in any situations. That'll be worrisome. But I hope you guys are understanding this. We had them drill. And then they would go out and they would create incredible results with a difficult process simply because they memorized it. Same thing here, right? I was not a very sociable person. I wasn't very good at talking to people. I know it's hard for people to understand that because I speak on stage now. And I just want to tell you guys, I'm terrified to death every time I get up there, right? Because it was not part of my talent. It wasn't part of my gift, right? It's solely through brute force that I've gotten to this point. When I first got started, I memorized that script and I just said, I am just going to work Eric Worre's script to death. You know what I mean? I would run into people and they'd be like, well, can you tell me anything about it? I'm like, well, I'm brand new. I can't tell you anything about it. The video will explain everything. When can you watch it? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like a broken record. Sometimes people would ask me 3 or 4 questions and I would come back the same way. Like, hey, I'm brand new. I can't explain anything, the video. And they would say, well, I don't want to watch the video. I'd say, no problem. This might not be for you. Let me know if you ever change your mind, right? And I was just strict on it. I just followed that script. So second example, Grant Cardone. Everyone pretty much agrees Grant Cardone. If you don't, Brian Tracy, right? It's either Grant Cardone or Brian Tracy is the greatest sales trainer of all time. I think by the numbers, it's Grant Cardone now. Grant Cardone, his people that sell 6-figure and 7-figure real estate deals, every single day in their office, timers go off, buzzers go off at like random times. If you guys ever watch him live, like they go off at like 8:53 or whatever. And everyone in the office, people who make multiple 6 figures, stop what they're doing, partner up, and they drill. And they just practice. Why do they do that? Because they're trying to stay sharp, because they know their skills are everything in this business, right? The more you develop, the best trained team always wins. But it's not the best learned team. It's the best trained team. It's not even the best practice team if they practice the wrong things, right? It's the best trained team. It's where there's an actual coach that's course correcting somebody and they're willing to be coached and get better and better and better and continue to make the next calls. So I hope that's helpful for you guys. Now, after this, here's the win for this story. All of those people in the room that were scared to make the calls, including the person that botched the invitation after they volunteered to do it. We practiced with them. They partnered up. They practiced. I'd say about 10 times each. And they were champions at it. They were so good at it after 10 times each that they could have easily got up on stage at convention and just done it. And I would have been like, perfect, right? I mean, they were on point about it. And they started making their first couple calls. They were still scared to make their calls, even once they were precise on it. Josh actually went around. I had to leave. I had another appointment. So Josh actually went around and helped each person make their first call. Well, these guys left, and they were so excited, and they felt so empowered that they knew what to say, that they had their own call party. They literally went across the street to a restaurant, and for the next 2 hours, they busted out phone calls to book up appointments, and literally every single person from that class fast started. Okay, that's a clue, right? Now that's a small sample size, but that's why I'm trying to give you these other examples of places where this matters. One last example I'll give you. Brian Carruthers. I had a conversation with him about his daily work. And he's sort of in an aside, just a sort of a casual way. This was just like at a dinner, that I had asked this. I just basically asked him, has your schedule changed a lot since you first got started in the business? Right? That's basically what I asked. Has your schedule changed a lot since you first got started? He said, well, nowadays I really don't work the business even close to the amount of hours that I used to. He said, but I still do 50 calls a day to stay sharp. Okay. I still do 50 calls a day to stay sharp in the most casual, just completely went back to the other conversation he was having. And I sat there and I thought to myself, if I hit 50 calls a day, that's a good day for me. I just want to be honest with you guys. 50 calls is a lot. And Brian's going, well, I still do 50 calls a day to stay sharp, right? Just to stay on point because the practice is that important to him. And I thought that was very interesting, right? Top athletes practice more, not less, right? It's not like LeBron James goes, well, I've already practiced enough. I'm number one in the world. So I'm just going to show up to the games now. The top players actually practice more than they play by a 10x rule, right? They're practicing for 10 hours for every hour they're playing the game, maybe 20 or 30. And yet here we get people started. We tell them what to say, but we don't have them practice it until it becomes muscle memory. And then we don't observe them and coach them to make sure that they're doing it right. Instead, what they do is they go say whatever comes to mind to 2 or 3 people. Those people dump on this, and then they quit. And so what we're really doing people a disservice by not helping them get that first win, not helping them know exactly what to say. So that being said, I came down to the Super Saturday, and I talked about what to say. I went through this invitation. I'm going to go through it with you guys tonight, but I really encourage you to just get GoPro by Eric Worre, get it on audio, and listen to this chapter and internalize it and practice it yourself. Actually write down the 8 steps and practice it yourself. The key here is that it's not a script. It's just 8 steps. As long as you hit all 8, you can say it however you want. Truthfully, you can say it however you want as long as you get all 8 steps. The only phrase that you keep exactly the same no matter what is if I would you. As long as you have that phrase and you get all 8 steps, you're going to do a great invitation. Okay? But I came down to the Charleston Super Saturday and I went through this, and Vic Hendricks practiced this. And we left. He practiced it a bunch of times, and he called me, and I picked up the phone and he said, hey, Nick, I've only got a second, but I got someone to share with you. And I knew right away what he was doing. I was like, oh, he's about to invite me to take a look at Legal Shield, right? And he went through and did a perfect invitation, right, for me on the phone. I even gave him a little bit of pushback, like, hey, what is it? He was like, the video explained everything. I was like, my man, he's on it, right? And he called me and he delivered. And I tell you what, I am confident that he can invite anybody anywhere at any time because he's practiced that now. Well, I'll go ahead and say this for all of you guys on here tonight. This is what I recommend you do. Even if you consider yourself to be a professional at this, even if you already can just knock that invitation out perfectly. If you can't, I highly encourage you to practice it. But if you can, call me up, call up Teresa, call up Frank, call up John or Elizabeth, call up Corey Muhammad, and invite them as if they were a prospect. They'll pick up on it within the first 10 seconds, right? But then they can actually hear how you would do it. And if they have any suggestions for improvements, you might just get some really powerful coaching in that moment. Not just teaching, but coaching, right? So that you can then actually improve your skills and go get better results the next time. So that being said, especially for all the new people on, let me go through this invitation really, really quickly. 8 steps, okay? Be in a hurry, compliment, the reason for your call, if I would you. That's the first 4. Be in a hurry, compliment, the reason for your call, and if I would you. So the first 2 are really easy, but they're so important. Maybe like the way you set the tone is so important. Being in a hurry, there's 2 reasons we do this. Number 1, philosophically, just like from a psychology standpoint, rather, people want to work with people who are busy. People who are busy get things done. If you say, hey, I got nothing going on, I'm totally free. I mean, nobody thinks that you're accomplishing anything, right? If you're busy, okay, they've got stuff going on. But the real reason is because this gives you an excuse to not answer any questions, right? If you're in a hurry, then they say, well, I've got a question. You say, well, I don't have a lot of time, right? Like I said, I'm in a hurry, but the video will answer all your questions. Boom, you easy out on that. So be in a hurry, compliment, okay? And being in a hurry, guys, I for a while was using the example of I'm walking to the gym. Hey, man, I'm walking to the gym, so I've only got a second. I heard some people saying that to their prospects when they're making calls because they had just copied what I was saying. Guys, please don't do that. If you're not actually walking to the gym or if you're not actually walking to class, because I use both of those, don't say those. It won't make any sense. You don't have to have a reason either. You can just say, hey, I only have a minute, but I had to share something with you. Okay, that's a generic one. I only have a minute, but I had to share something with you because it shows your excitement and it creates the, the urgency.